"I'm sorry, but you're not welcome here," the waitress said curtly, her eyes briefly flicking down to glance at the man's prosthetic leg. Thomas Tom Granger, a 75-year-old retired mariner, remained silent as his fingers trembled slightly on his cane. A hush fell over the small-town diner. A few patrons glanced up only to quickly look away, choosing avoidance rather than involvement. Not one person spoke up in Tom's defense. Exactly 24 hours later, a black SUV rumbled into the diner's parking lot with an ominous hum that heralded an unforgettable day for this quiet town. In 2006, Tom lost his left leg to an IED in Iraq. Since that time, he had lived alone on the outskirts of town in a well-worn trailer. Every morning, regardless of the weather, he walked nearly 2 miles to Sally's Café for its food, for the comfort and routine offered by sitting at his favorite window booth. Alongside this journey, he'd pick up litter from sidewalks or straighten overturned trash cans, occasionally helping children who fell off their bikes all without expecting anything back from others around him. Yet everyone used to know about him until one particular day when everything changed. Tom entered the cafe with his usual routine, quietly nodding at a few familiar faces. However, behind the counter stood an unfamiliar figure, a young blonde waitress with cold and unreadable eyes. She glanced at him briefly before frowning and bluntly stating, "We don't serve people like you." Tom blinked in surprise. "All I wanted was a coffee," he responded gently. Her voice remained firm as she insisted, "You'll have to leave." The room stayed silent. No one stepped in or spoke up for him. Calmly reaching into his wallet, Tom pulled out a crumpled bill and placed it on the table. With a soft sigh of resignation, he turned around and made his way out of the cafe, while laughter echoed from a booth in the corner. Outside, an overcast sky greeted him somberly. The weight on Tom's chest felt even more oppressive. He had endured fire, loss, and survival before, but being treated like an unwanted burden in the country, sacrificed so much for cut deeper than any battlefield injury ever could. As he walked down the sidewalk, a group of teenagers zoomed past him on skateboards. One nearly collided with him and shouted dismissively, "Get out of the way, old man," laughing as they disappeared around the corner. Shaken by this encounter, Tom leaned against a lamppost to steady himself and took a deep breath. While gazing back through the diner's wide front window, he could still see people chatting, sipping coffee, and scrolling their phones, living the very life he and men like him had fought to protect. Now they seemed indifferent to his presence. His phone buzzed in his pocket. It was an unknown number. He usually ignored those calls, but today curiosity got the better of him. A single message flashed on the screen. "Report received, stand by." Tom furrowed his brow. Hadn't reported anything recently, had he? As clouds rumbled overhead, he began the long walk back to his trailer, step by step, a rhythm he'd followed since his days in uniform, with a straight back and squared shoulders. Inside, something in him broke for the first time in years. His eyes stung as rain began to fall gently. He found a small bench near the park and sat down, pulling out a well-worn notebook from his coat pocket, a habit he developed over decades, and started to write. There had been no explanation when he was told to leave, just turned away without reason. Although his handwriting trembled slightly, each line was clean and precise. As he wrote, a young couple passed by. A woman whispered something. The man glanced at Tom, before quickly urging her forward with an increased pace. When Tom returned home later, nothing changed there. Hanging up his coat like always and washing his hands at the kitchen sink marked another day, ending seamlessly into routine's fold once more. Then came silence. Tom stared at the photo on the wall. depicting his old special forces team 10 men full of youth and fire. Now only 6 were still alive. On his table Saturday an old radio he continued to use for catching the evening news, alongside a worn leather-bound journal embossed in gold lettering with Delta Unit. Always ready, always one. He neither posted about what had happened nor called a friend. Instead, he opened the journal and quietly added an entry before pouring himself some tea and settling near the window to scan eyes over into through darkness beyond. A stray cat, same one that visited most nights, crept inside through a cracked door as Tom patted his leg. "Hey there, Colonel," he whispered to the cat, affectionately using the nickname of his long-lost commanding officers. The wind howled outside, whistling through the door's edges like distant echoes from his past. The radio crackled again as a broadcaster's voice announced, "Tomorrow marks the anniversary of Operation Guardian, where American troops." Tom turned off the dial quickly. He wasn't in need of that memory tonight. Instead, he thumbed through pages of his journal filled with names and notes, some adorned with stars beside them, while others had small crosses as a ritual revisited each year. He made it a point to visit the families of those who didn't return. Tomorrow, it would be Mrs. Kimmel's turn. Her husband Will had saved Tom's life in Iraq at the cost of his own. Without fail every year, Tom placed flowers on Will's grave and tended to her garden while she slept, keeping his actions anonymous. As he looked out through the curtains that evening, a black sedan loitered across the street, but remained still as if part of its shadowy surroundings. Unfazed by its presence, Tom mused aloud to himself. "You learn which shadows pose no threat and which ones do." Then he added quietly, "It's just you and me tonight, Colonel." He spoke to the cat as he pulled a blanket over his lap, while rain continued to fall. Sunrise. The clouds had thinned slightly, but the air still felt heavy. Precisely at 6:15 a.m., a black SUV rolled into Sally's Café's gravel parking lot and idled for a moment, before turning off its engine with low hums fading away. Moments later, 2 additional trucks arrived behind it, each bearing SEAL Brotherhood Delta Unit decals on their rear windows. The vehicle doors opened simultaneously and several men emerged, all broad-shouldered figures, exuding discipline, their mere presence altering the atmosphere around them. Without uttering greetings or cracking smiles, they carried an aura of quiet yet resolute focus. Leading this formidable group was Dean Harper, known formally as Commander Dean Harper by those acquainted with him. During the war, he was known by those who fought alongside him. Now, he's recognized as the CEO of a respected private security firm and, more importantly, once led Tom Greer's unit. As they entered the cafe with steady steps, conversations halted mid-sentence and forks paused in mid-air. The blonde waitress, who had served an insult to one of them just yesterday, went pale, her face drained of color. Commander Harper approached Tom's usual table confidently and placed a worn photograph down, an image showing Delta Unit standing shoulder to shoulder in uniform, and gently laid a bronze star medal beside it. "This man," Commander Harper announced with strength in his voice and steadiness in his eyes, "a testament to someone we've trusted many times over. Between us all stood strong against death. I remember the moment you turned him away when he came in for coffee yesterday," stammered the waitress, struggling to find her words. "I didn't know who he was. I didn't mean," she continued, now aware of what had transpired. Harper responded with a firm, yet calm tone devoid of any shouting or theatrics. Instead, his words weighed heavily in the room as truth sunk in. "Now you know." The group ordered a full breakfast: pancakes, bacon, eggs, the works, and when it was time to settle their bill, They produced an envelope stuffed with culmination of every tip Tom had ever left at this diner over 5 years, meticulously recorded by someone determined never to forget them. As reality seeped into silence, one patron after another rose from their seats, until finally even a man seated near the window cleared. Last winter, he mentioned how during a power outage, Tom brought blankets to my building and checked on each apartment without saying a word. A woman chimed in, "When my son's tire blew out near the highway, Tom changed it for him and disappeared before we could thank him." The cafe's owner stepped forward from the back looking visibly upset. He nervously adjusted his apron as he spoke. "I wasn't here yesterday," he admitted. "I had no idea this happened." Harper turned toward him sternly. "Then you'd better learn who works for you," she said sharply. "That man's blood is in soil you'll never walk." From a quiet corner of the room, an older woman raised her hand. "He's the one who places flags at the cemetery every Memorial Day, always just before dawn. I seen him. It's Tom, one of the SEALs," confirmed, but he never wanted anyone to know. The waitress tried a last-ditch excuse. "I thought he looked homeless with his torn coat," she said as another SEAL interrupted her remark by asking if people should be judged based on their appearance. His tone was not angry, merely painfully direct. The diner grew silent as they finished their meals and started to leave. Just before walking out, Commander Harper paused and turned back toward everyone in the room, saying only one word that left an impact: heroes. "You don't need to remember them, but we never forget." Word had spread outside and locals began to gather. Some appeared embarrassed while others seemed confused. Yet no one spoke up. The SEALs didn't drive off immediately. Instead, Harper stepped aside to make a call on his satellite phone. Phase 1 complete, confirmed sighting. Moving to Phase 2. One of the younger SEALs leaned over and asked, "Sir, do you think he'll accept it?" Allowing himself a small smile first that morning, Harper replied, "It's not charity, it's back pay." Back inside, the waitress returned to clean up the table. As her hands trembled beneath one of the empty plates, she discovered a black business card adorned with gold print. "When you're ready to understand what service really means, give us a call." Quietly, the owner removed the "Help Wanted" sign from the front window as I watched. The truck pulled away. However, one soldier jumped out and walked back into the cafe. He approached the counter and faced her calmly, saying, "Next time ask who you're talking to." That afternoon, Tom was seated in his trailer with an open journal on his lap. While outside rain had ceased falling and nearby Saturday his cat, Colonel, purred softly beside him, the gentle sound blending with the low rumble of engines. As 3 vehicles pulled up to trucks and a familiar black SUV, the men waiting outside didn't knock. They simply stood expectantly. Tom rose, still holding his journal in hand, and opened the door to find Commander Harper stepping forward. There was no salute or formal introduction, just a quiet embrace shared between brothers in arms. "We've got a situation," Harper said quietly. "We need your expertise." Tom glanced over Harper's shoulder at the alert team behind him, young men eager and ready to learn, and then looked down at his journal before asking decisively, "What are my mission parameters?" Harper nodded solemnly. "Rebuild, restore, remind." Tom paused, and a slow, unmistakable smile spread across his face. He stepped forward without saying another word. The camera lingers on the photo hanging in Tom's home. The Delta unit standing proud in uniform. It slowly pans to capture the faded American flag fluttering outside his trailer door, a reminder that some never asked to be remembered, yet we remember them all the same. If you believe sacrifice should always be honored and service never forgotten, subscribe to our YouTube channel. because some heroes continue their service long after they've left duty behind.